The Vino Geek Podcast, wine from a Kiwi perspective. Welcome back to the Vino Geek Podcast. As you saw by the title, this week we're talking about this viral thing, which is vital thing, if you like. No, I shouldn't say that. But Jalapeño and Sauvignon Blanc. Now, I had to put my 5 cents worth in here. Pretty much every content creator is, and so I need to jump on the bandwagon. Really, like, you're putting Jalapeño and Sauvignon Blanc. I understand that, yes, Sauvignon Blanc can have this flavor profile, and for me, if you're drinking a Sauvignon Blanc that you need to add jalapeno, you're not drinking a good Sauvignon Blanc. So find a better Sauvignon Blanc because, well, yeah, I'm not going to test it on the show, on the podcast. Not going to do that because, again, I think why? I mean, wine has been made, as a complete drink. It's sure you can mix it up, and people do, sangria and what have you. But it's usually done with rubbish wine. You don't make sangria with good wine. The Spaniards, they use their cheap stuff, their leftovers to make sangria. They don't do it with their best stuff. So just drink better wine. I mean, if you have to add jalapeno to Sauvignon Blanc, that's obviously because you need to drink better wine. So that's the key thing. And pictures, the clips that I've seen online, they're drinking American Sauvignon Blanc. There's only one guy, and he's the Art of Wine, which I've seen a clip with, who's using a Kiwi Sauvignon Blanc, and he doesn't see the point in it either. And his clip is very good. He actually said, so what? So who cares that they share the same compound? So does this Johnny Walker Red Label that he had in his hand, and he poured that into the wine. Is that a good thing to do? So, because they both have alcohol. So, yeah. And he had a Mount Riley Sauvignon Blanc, so he had a Kiwi Sauvignon Blanc, but these other ones are using American Sauvignon Blanc, and I sort of think, well, there you go. You're using inferior Sauvignon Blanc. Drink Kiwi, you don't need to add it because it's got flavour in spades. You don't need to add anything more. So, yeah. I mean, for me, if you want jalapeno in your Sauvignon Blanc, find something from a cooler year or from, for instance, find a North Island Sauvignon Blanc from 2023. It's bound to have some green capsicum-y jalapeno flavours because the vintage was rubbish. Not rubbish, but it was cyclone affected, so it's not going to be hot. It's not going to be opulent and ripe and everything else. It's going to have those green flavours. Another one is drinking Sauvignon Blanc, a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc or a Sauvignon Blanc with Semillon in it. Semillon, my first vintage I worked was in Gisborne, and for about, I don't know, it felt like weeks, but it was probably a week of every day I'd be biking to work, and all I could smell for, a kilometre away was jalapeno and banana bread. So obviously the banana bread was the fermentation smell, so just the yeast doing its thing. The jalapeno was the Semillon. So much Semillon was being processed at the winery that it just perfumed the whole place and the surrounding area with jalapeno. And it's really strange because you taste the wine. It tastes like jalapeno with no spice. So, yeah, for me, that's I would get my sort of jalapeno fix, if you like, is to have Semillon or Semillon Sauvignon Blanc blends. I mean, so the chemical compound that they both share is pyrazines, and this is also found in Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot to an extent, especially in New Zealand, where you can get that green sort of character coming through. Those, obviously, again, a cooler vintage, are going to express those green flavours. So, again, a 2023 Cabernet Franc or Cabernet Sauvignon, give it a whirl. It's probably going to have these pyrazines sticking up, and you can easily recognise it as jalapeno. So, yeah, and chill the red down, put it in a black glass or where you can't see the liquid, and drink it. Close your eyes. Especially Cabernet Franc, you've got Sauvignon Blanc. Seriously, it's funny how your brain plays tricks on you. I mean, years ago, when I was at Scenic Sales or Merchant, and talking probably 9 years ago, this happened. The manager, Florist, his wife, decided to test this out and just see if we could pick this wine. She took Fatberg Chardonnay, which, at the time was like $8 a bottle. Stupid price. Anyway, she added some red and some black food colouring to it. And for the life of us, the three wine guys at the time could not pick that it was a Chardonnay. We had no idea because of the red colour. And we went through every single wine that I possibly could, from, Ganacha to Cabernet Franc to, Gamay Noir to just anything that it possibly could, be, because we're thinking, it has to be red and it has to be unoaked red. We didn't look at each other's tongues to see that they had been dyed by food colouring. Long story short, great experiment. I'll never forget it. Great job there by Cindy. She fooled us, and I implore you to do that with any wine friends you have, people that think they know. Try that trick, because guarantee you that'll catch them out, because it certainly caught us out. So yeah, that's a little story on that, on how you can trick your brain. I mean, I know of stories where they've had bleached wine. So bleached Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc to turn it into Sauvignon Blanc, because it wasn't good enough for Cabernet. It was too green, but perfect for Sauvignon Blanc. Again, those green flavours, those pyrazines come through. That jalapeno flavour can show itself. I mean, I always tend to lean on sort of more capsicum and sort of your sort of pea poddy sort of character, but not jalapeno so much. It's only on the rare occasions where that jalapeno just sticks out and it shows itself to me. But who knows? The wine of the week which is a Sauvignon, by the way, potentially think that it is it has jalapeno. I mean, I picked up a vegetal character, but not so much jalapeno with this one. But again, as I said, there is plenty of Sauvignon out there that does have that jalapeno character, and so yeah, well worth hunting out. And that's the thing, given that we're a cool climate and the wines are so expressive, that means that you can very easily find a wine that has that, because of how we make the wines, how the wines are made in New Zealand, I should say, as opposed to America, where it's super hot, so it's going to burn off any of those green flavors. So you think about, these reels that all over social media, they're drinking American Sauvignon Blanc, hot climate. So, I've talked a little bit in the past about flavor profiles. So we'll just go back to it again. When so as grapes ripen, they go through these different stages. Best described with white wine. So they tend to go from sort of your green vegetal characters through to sort of citrus, and then into your tree fruit, then your stone fruit, And then as it gets hotter again, you go into tropical fruits. So you can imagine in a hot climate like California, they're picking their Sauvignon Blanc way up here and super ripe with a tropical fruit, and the herbaceousness is way down here. They can't hold it because it's just hot, you know. Sure, there might be a few places that has the cool nights that they can hold a little bit of that acidity, a little bit of that green flavour, but not as much as New Zealand, where we have that nice fluctuation, and we can keep that green flavour in there with passion fruit and stone fruit and what have you. So we get that juxtaposition. Obviously, even in Awatere Valley, for instance, it's cooler again than Waido, so they tend to just have green stone fruit and those greens. And as this is another story, I was around the same time as the previous story. I was invited to go down to Astrolabe and attend a blending trial with Simon Waghorn, the winemaker and owner. And he went through all his different parcels. So how he typically makes a Sauvignon Blanc and how most of the bigger Sauvignon Blancs are made is that they have, you know, he had 32 at the time, 32 different batches of Sauvignon Blanc, all fermented separately in small tanks. And this could be, for instance, you know, you might have one vineyard and you're getting 3 different batches out of it because you get free run, you get what they call the light pressings, and then the heavy pressings. So is the best quality is the free run, but then if you want a little bit more the the texture, the sort of coarseness on your palate, the phenolics, the tannins, you'll use some of those pressings cuts. And so you can have 3, and it could be, you know, you could have 20 different vineyards, but from each vineyard you're getting 3 different, you're having 3 different batches, and they're fermenting separately. So that's effectively what Simon does. And then he sits there and he just in a 100 ml measuring cylinder, he adds a different percentage of each, tastes it, and he's tasting to see, he's trying to get his house blend, basically the Astrolabe province is a house blend, and he's trying to make it the same every single time. And he's also making the awatere, and he's got a specific recipe, well, not a recipe, he's got a flavour profile, and he's manipulating the percentages each year to meet that flavour profile. And so where I'm going with this is that you can manipulate and you can take more of the cooler and less of the riper vineyards, put them together, and you'll get those different flavor profiles. So you can manipulate and get more of those jalapeno flavors, the pyrazines, into the Sauvignon Blanc by picking either earlier or picking from those cooler sites, particularly in the Awatere Valley, as I was just saying, versus the Waido Valley, which is typically riper and warmer. So, and then if you want the balance of the two, you will sort of do a 50-50 split, say, of Awatere and Waido, and you get that balance of the green and the riper flavors together. So, you know, if you're looking for jalapeno in your wine for Kiwis, just buy Awatere Valley, and especially ones further up the valley. So the further up, obviously, the cooler it is. So, and from a cooler year, so 23 would be a great year to experience this because of the fact that, sure, they didn't get the cyclone directly, but they did get some rain. You know, so that will affect the yields, affect the harvest, affect the summer. So they wouldn't have got as ripe. So they'd still pick at maturity, which will be a little bit less ripe than other years. So this is all theoretically, of course, but you can find those upper Awatere Valley Sauvignon Blanc that should have those bit of jalapeno coming through. Sure, they're trying to weed it out because they don't want it so much, even though for me, it's very much a part of the wine. You know, it's very much part of Sauvignon Blanc is those greener flavours. I don't know why we're trying to wipe them out, trying to erase those flavours when they are typically what makes Sauvignon Blanc. So, but yeah, as I said, you can find these flavours. One thing to note is that Central Otago, you tend not to get that herbaceousness for whatever reason. It's very much sort of limey and for me in the past, everyone's most sort of tried to sort of limey with pineapple. It's really interesting how they don't get that herbaceousness. Um, Martinborough does get some herbaceousness, as well as Nelson gets some too. So you can sort of even go to those two places and try and find Sauvignon Blanc with more jalapeno flavours. So yeah, that's what I do. And obviously Semillon, there's producers like Pegasus Bay make their Sauvignon Blanc with Semillon. So does Temata. Their Cape Crest is a blend of Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and Sauvignon Gris. So there is those blends out there that you can find. And then obviously there's a few straight Semillon, like our wine of the week. Just taking a quick pause in the episode to remind you to like, subscribe, comment, and come and follow me on socials too. Which basically we'll go on to now. So whilst I would love to be tasting that right now because it was so delicious, this was actually about a month ago. I had a visit from Derek from Ascoon, and he just basically ran through the wines with me, which was really cool. I basically got to taste all but the whole portfolio, which is so good. And overall, wines are great. The wines are, a lot of them are either picture perfect Hawke's Bay or they're just that step above, like the Semillon. This is probably one of my picks of the whole tasting, and it was the second wine in, which was really cool. So the Semillon 2020, so a little bit of bottle age, and I'm going to have to take a sip. It's not the Semillon, obviously, but sort of take a sip of something a little bit parched. And so the colour, I've got my notes down here, and I have sort of tried to show people in the past, but yeah, that's my notes. So there's 3 different wines on there, and it's basically, they're not full detailed notes, they're literally just bullet points. And then I just go, oh yes, remember that part of it, remember that part of it, yes, 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 yes. And then it builds back in my mind, and I can replay it. For whatever reason, I call it my little touch of autism. I seem to remember wines very well, and so that's why I just take short notes, and then I can go further from there. So, the colour. It was a beautiful sort of mid-straw yellow, so not super bright, but not pale either. So you can tell there was a little bit of development going on there. It was starting to transition. On the nose, there was this pithy lemon, there was sort of stone fruit, and it was sort of more sort of whitish stone fruits than your yellow stone fruits. One thing I didn't notice too much was any jalapeno. As I said, there was a touch of sort of that peapoddy herbaceousness, just enough to go, yeah, it's Semillon. That's kind of what's expected. So not too detailed on the nose, not too punchy and overblown on the nose, but everything was there, everything was in its place. Now, the palate was just delicious. It was round, it was soft, it was elegant. It had, for me, I've always struggled to find the descriptor for it. It's almost like a spiky sort of lime character, just not. And younger Semillon tends to have this really sort of really spike with that sort of punchy lime flavour. This had it there, the prickly, sort of more prickly. There you go, a prickly sort of feeling in the mouth of citrus. That acidity was just a little bit prickly, a little bit ticklish, if you like. It wasn't overblown. It was just there. Again, as I keep banging on about ripe acidity, there's that difference between underripe acidity and ripe acidity, and this again banged on the ripe acidity. It was just delicious. It was balanced. That citrus flavour carried through, a little bit of that stone fruit again with the herbaceous note. That sort of pea potty character was just hanging out there in the background. A touch of white pepper, and then the citrus kicked back in for that finish, and just kept going and carrying on. It was just really, really well made, delicious Sauvignon, and right in the zone. It's probably still has a couple of few more years in it, because Sauvignon is something that ages well. One thing to note: Sauvignon Blanc also has the ability to age well if it's produced in a style that can age well. So that's something else to think about with Sauvignon Blanc. If you're just cheap and cheerful from the supermarket, drink it. Don't hold on to it. But more serious styles, put it away for a few years. It can deal with it, so do it. As far as food goes, seafood, obviously. Salads, again, pretty obviously. The whole herb thing, like chicken with some lovely, like a lovely pesto with things. Pesto would be another great addition to this. Vegetables with pesto, would work really well. Yeah. Again, celery, ticks box there. As far as the score goes, really well made. It didn't have a lot of complexity, if you like. It offered everything it should do as a varietal wine, so it's hard to give it a super high score, even though it's just super delicious. So really 19 out of 20 and 91 out of 100, just because it's just lacking that extra little bit to carry it further. Things like beeswax, or more sort of, not spice, but just length and layers and complexity of flavors. That's the only thing that's lacking. Other than that, it's just a delicious drinking wine. So, 91. I can't give it more than that, because it just doesn't have that extra bits to get it to that next level, if you like. That 19.5 sort of 20 situation is, basically 20 is a unicorn. But 19.5, it has to just tick all the boxes, and it doesn't quite do that. So, Anyway, that's the wine of the week. Next week, we will try and revisit the Organic Wine Awards if nothing else comes up. But that's my aim, to hit that Organic Wine Awards and just go through it. I've actually crunched a bit of numbers on it, so interesting to sort of go through those with you and sort of show trends and where it sort of happens and what goes on. And be interesting to see if this theory that I have actually flows through to the other award shows. It'll be really interesting. So that's coming up next week. But until then, thank you as always for checking us out, for following, for liking, for doing all those things. Santé and God bless.